Hello, let's continue learning how we can be detail masters. Let's start with a plane as usual. And edit poly. And sometimes when I work on it, just apply different colors. So sometimes like with gray, sometimes blue. Let's go with the green this time. There we go. So sometimes just feel you need a little bit more green in your life. And here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply symmetry. I just applied symmetry once to get the edge in the middle. I can apply it again. And let's model this time from left to right. Sometimes I feel like right to left, sometimes left to right. So I want to make sure it's flipped. And then turbo smooth. All right. So I'm just going to extrude here. And just extrude here. Alright, so I just kind of like this shape for doing various things, just kind of a good starting point. And it just shows you how you can go from very simple to very complex very quickly. Alright, on top of this I'll just apply edit poly. And now I can just also apply symmetry. And so what I can do is to begin cutting and getting a shape right here. There we go. And I can also cut to get a different shape. Let's say right there. Alright, what I can do, so there's several ways to handle this. What I can do, for example, is to detach this. Or if I'm not worried about the other side, I would just model it as if there was no other side. But if it's going to be a piece of armor that will open up, then I actually want to apply a shell. So what I would do in that case is I would just select those polygons and then detach, and then this side would just be shelled and symmetrified, and now we have both an inside. So now when I eventually move it apart, we'll actually see a backside. Alright, but in this case I'm just going to bevel. Alright, what we can do is just bevel and then scale. And already that's making things more interesting because right now this is a very basic extrusion. In 3ds Max we call extrusions bevel because it just gives us a height and an outlet amount. If you're using Blender, then this is just an extrusion, and beveling is when you select the edges and chamfer them and give them additional sides. Right away you can see we have this happening here. I like to fix these things by just doing a while operation, just increasing it till it fixes that. In fact, we just do Control A and weld everything to fix those kinds of things. Right here, for example, I can just weld with a higher value. There we go. Okay, so this is a very boring extrusion. We can make it exciting right away by extruding again and then scaling. In order to get rid of this triangle effect, which can happen in Blender as well, you just want to go ahead and move it a little bit to the right. There we go. Or if you're going from the right to left, then you want to move a little bit to the left. So already this is a lot more exciting. So right now this is more of a very uniform bevel. And what I mean by that is that this is a very uniform detail, shape going all the way around. So what we can do is just very quickly move this a little bit up. And I can see a lot more space on the bottom than at the top. So already that creates a lot more visual interest. Alright, you can see when I did that, these edges moved a little bit lower. You can see how I would want to move it up a little bit here if I want to be more clean. Or what I can do is take advantage of that. So I would insert a loop around here. And then, for example, I can just select these edges or vertices and just kind of move them inwards a little bit here. Alright, I'm also just going to apply turbo smooth. What I'm going to do is use the double turbo smooth method, which is something you don't see me using very often, but I think it's very useful. So we're going to apply 2 iterations with the smoothing groups option, and then 1 with no smoothing groups option. And you can have it set to be 2 at render time. I like to keep it just 1 in the viewport just to keep things smooth. Alright, as you can see, we create a nice little interesting detail here. So a lot of details you can create almost by accident, just by a little bit of manipulation, just by a little bit of moving around. Let's just move this a little bit to the right to get rid of that. Alright, so very interesting results right away. So let's just further play around with this. And notice how I can get this detail, I can get this, I can move it up to get this. So you have a world of possibilities just by doing very simple movement on a very small amount of vertices, edges, or polygons. Next we can hold shift, left click to select this, and we can move it down like this, get this. We can get this, for example. Alright, now that we've got that, we can maybe have more opportunity here. So keep in mind as I'm making this, not all of these are good design decisions. I just want to show the possibilities. And then you can decide for yourself what is a good design decision and not. Alright, could be a nice little detail for a vent or something else going in there. That creates a little bit of an awkward situation right here. Sometimes what I like to do is turn off the second turbo smooth just so I can see what the first one is doing. It's giving me this. So I'm just thinking what I can do with that. Maybe I can select these polygons, give this a different smoothing group. Now I've got this happening. Give this a separate one. Now I've got this. Give this a separate one, and these. We can also do is Control A and then use Auto Smooth, but that will kind of ruin some parts. For example, it makes this too smooth, so what I can do is maybe decrease this. So using this automatic solution will not always give what you want. You will have to go in here and just modify some things yourself. And when you get this situation, usually the second one will kind of fix things up a little bit. On this situation, I can just select this, get this a separate smoothing group here. There we go. So already a nice little detail here. Let's continue. I'm just going to reapply symmetry just so we have the same on the other side, because without this, I'm kind of working with this on the right side, this on the left side. So I just like to kind of establish the right side, establish symmetry, and then apply edit poly right on top. Alright, I can then create another shape right here just by selecting this and once again just beveling. Alright, we can do some very basic connections, and then we can, for example, connect here as well. Maybe regularize this. So if you keep doing that, you'll get this effect where it kind of collapses on itself. So in this situation, I just like to make it 0 and just kind of scale it myself. Alright. As you can see, the smoothing groups are kind of messing things up here, so I'm going to select all of this. And then Auto Smooth. There we go. Let's reapply the second turbo smooth, and there we go. So right now I think this is a little bit too uniform, so I'm going to select these 3 edges. Edge constraints, just going to move this here. And then maybe back a little bit. Just going to go back and forth, and I'll put it nice in the middle. So the technique there is that if you just go back, it's going to do that. And if you keep kind of going back, kind of going to smooth things out a little bit. And then I can move this back a little bit as well. So notice if I just move it once, it's going to do this. But if I move it a little bit here, a little bit there, it's going to kind of balance out. So now it's just a little bit more interesting there. So these triangles kind of add some distortion, but we're not going to worry about that too much yet. So now that I've done that, I can create a further detail here. can also use set flow. Alright, that will give us this. So sometimes it doesn't always look perfect right away, but it gives you the opportunity. You see something interesting here. For example, I think this is a very nice looking detail, and I can't really tell why yet. So sometimes you'll get something like this, and you just have to keep tweaking it until you unlock its further potential. For example, I'm seeing some interesting possibilities here. I'm just thinking, how can I take this further? Well, what if I select these edges and kind of move them up? What if I move them down? So as you can see, very nice shapes we're getting here. And then I can select these and move them down or move them up. So I think this is a very appealing detail. In fact, I need to save this because I want to be able to recreate this detail for later. And I really want to see what kind of topology. As you can see, it's very simple. Alright, so I think that's a very appealing detail right there. You can of course push it further. So maybe I can select this and just do an inset. Now we've got that. But I'm not sure if I actually like that. You can select this and then do make planar, which just kind of even things out. Maybe regularize. So you can very easily modulate your detail. But I'm going to press Ctrl Z because I like it in its original state here. Alright, let's continue. So I kind of see something happening here. So maybe I can select this and give it a separate within group. So what I like about this method here is that it's very easy to give this a separate within group, and then you've got the definition happening here. If you're a Blender user, please let me know if there's a way to do this in Blender. I know Blender has things like vertex groups and of course creasing, but is there a way you can just select this and give this its own separate within group, for example? So just like that, we've got this kind of detail. I should be using more edit modifiers. Every time I add a major detail, I should just use that just so I can kind of go back and show you the exact process. Alright, so in this situation I'm going to make another copy just so I can show you. What we can do is we can create some sort of panel line right here. And so you can see this is kind of an isolated area here because of these sharp edges here. So we can just use that to our advantage. As you notice, the more we inset, the more this starts to happen. So sometimes it's a good idea just to activate face or edge constraint, just kind of even things out a little bit. Alright, then I can just quickly extrude like so. And so now we've got this kind of panel detail. But you can also kind of have interplay between this shape and the surrounding area. And I think that may be a little bit more interesting. So instead of just having it right here, we can go maybe a little bit lower. So what I can do to achieve that is to make a cut right here. And then maybe just move this. Sometimes you can just go in here and just kind of manually cut to get exactly where you want it to be. Alright, so then I can do it right here. And so this may be a little bit more interesting than on the left, but of course they are both valid. It just depends. For example, if you do this a lot, you may want to change it up and have the panel line kind of going away from this shape and kind of going somewhere else, for example. But you can see how we get really nice details. Some details are very purposeful, others are accidental. But it's up to you as an artist to step back. After you've done something accidentally, you step back and you see, okay, do I want to keep that? Do I want to refine it? Or do I want to just scrap it and do something else? So just because it's accidental doesn't mean your entire design is accidental. Because you have to purposefully choose if you want to keep your accident or get rid of it.